Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left.
Hello everyone, this is Sankalp and this is my first video on this channel. Welcome back to IK Info Overnight. So today we will learn about the Black Death, the various causes of the Black Death, various names of the Black Death and many more things associated with the plague called the Black Death. So let's start the video.
So in this video we will learn about the Black Death. The Black Death, also known as the pestilence, the great mortality or the plague, was the deadliest pandemic recorded in human history. The Black Death resulted in the deaths of up to 25 to 200 million people in Eurasia and North Africa, peaking in Europe from 1347 to 1351. Plague, the disease caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, was the cause. Yersinia pestis infection most commonly results in bubonic plague but can cause septicemic or pneumonic plagues. The Black Death was the beginning of the second plague pandemic. The plague created religious, social, and economic upheavals with profound effects on the course of European history. The Black Death most likely originated in Central Asia or East Asia, from where it traveled along the Silk Road, reaching Crimea by 1347. From there, it was most likely carried by fleas living on the black rats that traveled on Genoese merchant ships, spreading throughout the Mediterranean basin and reaching Africa, Western Asia, and the rest of Europe via Constantinople, Sicily, and the Italian peninsula. Current evidence indicates that once it came on shore, the Black Death was in large part spread by human fleas, which caused pneumonic plague, and the person to person contact via aerosols, which pneumonic plague enables, thus explaining the very fast inland spread of the epidemic, which was faster than would be expected if the primary vector was rat fleas. The Black Death was the second disaster affecting Europe during the late Middle Ages, the first one being the Great Famine, and is estimated to have killed 30% to 60% of Europe's population. In total, the plague may have reduced the world population from an estimated 475 million to 350 or somewhere around 350 million in the 14th century. There were further outbreaks throughout the late Middle Ages, and with other contributing factors, it took until the year 1500 for the European population to regain the population levels of the year 1300. Outbreaks of the plague recurred at various locations around the world, with the most recent one being in the Inner Mongolian region of China. Names of the plague. European writers contemporary with the plague described the disease in Latin as pestis or pestilentia. Some other names of the Black Death are pestilence, epidemia, epidemic, mortalitas, mortality, etc. In English, prior to the 18th century, the event was or Great Pestilence, the Plague, or the Great Death. Subsequent to the pandemic, the first morine or first pestilence was applied to distinguish the mid 14th century phenomenon from other infectious diseases and epidemics of plague. The 1347 pandemic plague was not referred to specifically as black in the 14th or 15th centuries in any European language, though the expression Black Death had occasionally been applied to fatal disease beforehand. Black Death was not used to describe the plague pandemic in English until the 1750s. The term is first attested in 1755, where it translated Danish Den så død, literally the Black Death. This expression as a proper name for the pandemic had been popularized by Swedish and Danish chroniclers in the 15th and early 16th centuries, and in the 16th and 17th centuries was translated to other languages like Icelandic, German, and French. Previously, most European languages had named the pandemic a variant of the Latin Magna Mortalitas, literally the Great Death. The phrase Black Death, describing death as black, is very old. Homer used an Odyssey to describe the monstrous Scylla with her mouth full of black death. Seneca the Younger may have been the first to describe an epidemic as Black Death, but only in reference to the acute lethality and dark prognosis of disease. The 12th to 13th century French physician Gilles de Corbeil had already used atra mors to refer to a pestilential fever in his work on the signs and symptoms of diseases. The phrase mors nigra, Black Death, was used in 1350 by Simon de Corvino, a Belgian astronomer, in his poem On the Judgment of the Sun at the Feast of Saturn, which attributes the plague to an astrological conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. His use of the phrase is not connected unambiguously with the plague pandemic of 1347 and appears to refer to the fatal outcome of disease. The historian Cardinal Francis Aidan Gasket wrote about the Great Pestilence in 1893 and suggested that it had been some form of the ordinary Eastern or bubonic plague. In 1908, Gasket claimed that use of the name Atramors for the 14th century epidemic first appeared in a 1631 book on Danish history by J.I. Pontanus. Commonly, and from its effects they called it the Black Death, was written in that book. 14th century plague's causes. The 13th century Mongol conquest of China caused a decline in farming and trading. Economic recovery had been observed at the beginning of the 14th century. In the 1330s, many natural disasters and epidemics led to widespread famine, starting in 1331 with the deadly plague pandemic arriving soon after. Other conditions such as war, famine, and weather contributed to the severity of the disease. Early theories. The most authoritative contemporary account is found in a report from the medical faculty in Paris to Philip VI of France. It blamed the heavens in the form of a conjunction of three planets in 1345 that caused a great pestilence in the air, also known as the miasma theory. Some Muslim scholars taught that the pandemic was a martyrdom and mercy from God, assuring the believers place in paradise. It was believed that non-believers it was a punishment for them. Some Muslim doctors cautioned against trying to prevent or treat a disease sent by God. The majority adopted preventive measures and treatments for plague used by Europeans. These majority depended on the writings of the ancient Greeks. Predominant modern theories. The Oriental rat flea engorged with blood was the primary vector for the transmission of Yersinia pestis, the organism responsible for spreading bubonic plague in most plague epidemics. Both male and female fleas feed on blood and can transmit the infection. Oriental rat flea infected with the Yersinia pestis bacterium can spread the virus into an infected host, causing infection. Due to climate change in Asia, rodents began to flee the dried out grasslands to more populated areas, spreading the disease. The plague disease caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis is enzootic. In populations of fleas carried by ground rodents, including mammoths in various areas including Central Asia, Kurdistan, Western Asia, North India, Uganda, and the Western United States. Yersinia pestis was discovered by Alexandre Yersin, a pupil of Louis Pasteur, during an epidemic of bubonic plague in Hong Kong in 1894. Yersin also proved this bacillus was present in rodents and suggested that the rat was the main vehicle of transmission. The mechanism by which Yersinia pestis is usually transmitted was established in 1898 by Paul Louis Simon and was found to involve the bites of fleas whose midguts had become obstructed by replicating Yersinia pestis several days after feeding on an infected host. This blockage starves the fleas and drives them to aggressive feeding behavior, which results in thousands of plague bacteria being flushed into the feeding site, infecting the host. The bubonic plague mechanism was also dependent on two populations of rodents, one resistant to the disease which acts as host, keeping the disease endemic, and a second that lack resistance. The second group dies, the fleas move on to other hosts including people, thus creating a human epidemic. Previous plague epidemics. Recent research has suggested plague first infected humans in Europe and Asia in the late Neolithic early Bronze Age. Research in 2018 found evidence of Yersinia pestis in an ancient Swedish tomb, which may have been associated with the Neolithic decline around 3000 BC, in which European population fell significantly. This Yersinia pestis may have been different to more modern types, with bubonic plague transmissible by fleas first known from Bronze Age remains near Samara, Russia. The symptoms of bubonic plague are first attested in a fragment of Rufus of Ephesus, preserved by Oribasius. These ancient medical authorities suggest bubonic plague had appeared in the Roman Empire before the reign of Trajan, 6 centuries before arriving at Pelusium in the reign of Justinian I. In 2013, researchers confirmed earlier speculation that the cause of the plague of Justinian, which occurred in 1541, with recurrences until 750 was Yersinia pestis. This is known as the first plague pandemic. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like this video, share this video with your friends and subscribe to our channel. This was Sankalp Pandey. Bye.